There's the right way of selling, and there's every other way. For me, it's always about being professional, and that's one of my characteristics in the sales role, is always be a pro, is that you have to learn to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. It's one thing to convince someone to do something, but it's another thing to persuade someone. Said, hey, not a problem, I'll pick you up every day, and I will drop you off. I just need you to work hard. I asked him, why are you offering me the position now? He stood up, he said, well, you've got 2 legs and you're able to do this, right? So if we had 100 and there's 3 categories, how much do you think the words make up of those percentages?
20% max?
7. That's how you change the sales perspective too, is that I'm not selling people, I'm solving problems. If you want more love in your life, you got to give more love out. If you don't want hate in your life, don't be giving hate out. Ask for the close, go for the close after you have built value.
Welcome back to another episode of Business Hats Podcast. Today we have a sales coach who has extensive background in selling windows, Brian Malone. What are you the most known for?
I think it was years ago, I used to run a militant sales training course.
Okay.
And
militant like in the military or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very organized, structured, similar to our workout this morning, where we had different stations. And we knew the end goal was to get our heart rate to 170, 175 to get in that peak zone. Mm-hmm. And similar for myself, I just ran a really tight, structured sales training. But for me, the most important thing for a salesperson was the initial training, mentors, but that first 90 days to make sure that they were trained properly. I view it as there's the right way of selling and there's every other way.
Got it. How was the experience this morning? For those of you who are tuning in new to the podcast, with every guest, we offer them to do the workout and to do the sauna. Brian experienced, he tuned in for the whole experience. We're not forcing it on our guests, but if they want to do it, we'll let them. How was the workout?
Yeah, first I want to say thank you so much for having me come out. Absolute pleasure. I texted you last night. Excited is an understatement. And I'm also regretting signing up for the workout in the sauna this morning because you definitely kicked my butt.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah.
So we did the 25 calorie challenge, which is very short challenge. It's like 30, 40 seconds. I mean, our video guy did 40 seconds. You could not do it. You lasted 10 seconds, 10 calories, and you were giving up. Like nothing,
that was the third trial.
Yeah, nothing left in you.
No.
How was the sauna?
The sauna was awesome. Very cool. Love the setup.
Very hot.
Very hot, very cool. But over the weekend, I ended up seeing 2 Pearl Jam shows.
Okay.
And didn't do a lot of drinking, but just exhausted my body. And something like that, sitting in the sauna for 10, 15 minutes is just, for me, it's an absolute release. Getting the toxins out, just feeling good. And I see people that they tell me all the time, I haven't been to the gym in 2 weeks, man. I need somebody to really push me. And to think for 2 weeks, you don't release any of those toxins and you don't really get those endorphins, peaking. It was a cool experience. It was very cool, and I'm grateful for coming out.
Like in a workplace, when you work with the people who don't exercise, do you try to motivate them to do it? Does it affect the business? Do you see it in the workplace that it always affects you? Can you tell who's working out, who's not?
Yeah, physically, mentally as well too.
Would you say the people who work out usually also harder workers? Or more successful, or it's a great question. It's not parameter.
It's a great question, and I think unfortunately, in one of the segments I want to talk about today was kind of that dark cloud casted over our industry and the sales industry itself. And I'm going to go right at it. And,
let's do it.
You got guys out there, the fake gurus, guys like Andy Elliott. They're on stage. They're teaching a sales training course or a sales training class. But throughout it, they're picking on people for their physique. And I've seen segments where he's asked people to take their shirt off. To me, there's no correlation between being at your peak physical state and also excelling in your business. For me, it's just really not a topic that I touch on too much. I always want to encourage younger people, men, women, girls or boys, to get into sports, to get into athletics. Any kid I see, especially if they're really, really rambunctious, I tell them, get into wrestling, get all that energy out. But I don't force physical activity down any of my sales representatives' throats, that's up to them. And what they do on their own time is up to them. Will I encourage it? Would I meet them at the gym? Heck yeah. And I would love to be their catalyst. And personally, I've recruited 2 guys from my gym to get into, sales, the sales role. And I knew from their hard work, their dedication, their commitment to the gym, they're going to be uber successful in sales.
Well, I feel like there's a fine line between motivating people who work for you, like creating environment, leading them with them, versus straight out telling them, hey, you have to step up, like challenging them physically. Where's that fine line? Like, why do you feel like telling someone that you are overweight, like maybe laughing, like body shaming? Like, where's the fine line? Like, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable in a workplace? I'm pretty sure there's laws. And can you fire a person if he has too many? Why not? I mean, you can
No.
fire for any reasons, right?
Yeah, I don't believe you can fire anybody, and I wouldn't, especially in the United States, for any physical attributes. Color, size, sex, race. I would stay away from that, especially for me being just a white single male in the United States. There's areas that I just don't touch. And the one thing that I think I can always lean back on for myself and people that have trained with me and worked for me, I'm always professional. So I'll always keep it professional. I think I let an F-bomb out this morning. I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, Dmitry." And you're like, "I don't care, man." But for me, it's always about being professional. And that's one of my characteristics in the sales role, is always be a pro. What does a professional look like? But the one thing I would always say to that is, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make the horse drink the water. You can show people the way, you can help them through it. But what I try to do is I try to lead and encourage and be a servant leader to people. And I ask them, hey, just like you did last night, would you like to work out with me? And I'll ask them, hey, I've got a great workout, or I would love to have you try jujitsu. Would you be open to it? And 9 times out of 10, people are open to the idea. But I think that just like most things in life, it's starting off. It's getting into a new area that you're unfamiliar with. And the one thing I teach in sales is that you have to learn to be comfortable in the uncomfortable.
There's a viral clip going around, and it's a podcast, and this man challenges girls. He said, like, if a guy calls a girl out fat, he will get canceled. Like, you're obese, you're fat, whatever. But if a girl calls a man short, like, say, you're too fat for me to date you, and if she said, he will get canceled immediately. Like, he cannot say that. And but if the girl calls a guy like, you're too short for me, she will never get any backlash. And he said, but if you think about it, I'm calling out things that you can change, and you're calling out things that I can't change.
That's cool.
It's very cool. But I think where Andy Elliott comes from is that mentality that you can change it. And do you feel like men need motivation, like in the workforce? Because I do see a lot of my friends, my buddies, like everybody's uncomfortable with their bodies, right? Like, if we're honest with it, like, we all eat not healthy, at least not 100% of the time, even the best of us, right? We don't exercise. There's always like next level. When Andy Elliott comes out, or Andrew Tate, or whatever, those kind of men do push us to our limits, maybe in their own ways. How he does it, I mean, they're public figures, and also it's one clip. He's done hundreds of them, and we look at that as like, oh, that's not acceptable. I mean, I find it cringy when we ask. You mentioned clip this morning where someone was challenging to do the push-ups, and that was not a good, cringy, right? Like, there's a right way to do it, and there's wrong way to do it. So what's the right way to push people to their limits, and what's the wrong way to do it?
It's a great question. And I think it really comes back to sales and the world of selling, which is everything we do in life. And it's one thing to convince someone to do something, but it's another thing to persuade someone to do something. And I really teach the art of persuasion. To me, selling is a science. Mm-hmm. It's difficult, but simple. I do the same thing every day. Simple. Difficult piece is I meet with tons of different people that I'm trying to persuade. But if you just convince somebody, that's not enough. You need to persuade them. And I think by persuading, it's not enough to tell somebody. For me, telling is not selling. But you can ask a series of questions to lead them to the end result. And that's really the Socratic method of leading people into a decision. All doctors do it, lawyers do it, all professionals do it. And
we're talking about typical overcoming objections, phrases that
helping people
memorize?
through maybe to get to where they want to be physically. And a good question to always ask is, how is this serving you? And I think if the one thing is if you don't have that connection with the person, if it's just surface level, so for the first 3 to 6 months to 1 year, and a man or woman joins my sales team, it's very surface level. We're warming up. And I think a lot of times in psychology, they talk about the 90-day honeymoon period. When you first meet a man or a woman, it's the honeymoon period for 90 days. And they could say anything and do anything in front of you, and you don't get turned off. But day 91, they say something weird, and you're like, who am I dating? And that's the honeymoon stage. For me, the first year is really a honeymoon stage where I'm really trying to find out who this person is, and most importantly, what's their why. Because if you're just getting up to go to work because you did it yesterday, in my eyes, that's conformity. And a lot of my parents and aunt and uncles and grandparents and great-grandparents, they just conformed to society. And I'm not a big believer in that.
I want to give huge shout out to Monarch Roofing, Martin Pettigrew, and the whole crew there. They do it right. So I actually recently experienced it. So I'm a firm believer that something like fitness, something like betterness of ourselves, you can only achieve it if you lead by example. Like I never ever ask my kids to work out with me, but then every time I do, someone comes around. And now I see those habits because they see me on the weekends, they see me all the time. And now they're like my 16-year-old daughter works out every day. And she said, Dmitry, Dad, I don't feel the same if I don't work out. But Martin Pettigrew, likewise, like they have a 4:30 in the morning club. So they run this gym. I think it's like Planet Fitness or something. Everybody comes in. And I went on vacation to Myrtle Beach. So I joined them. It was like 16 guys there.
Wow.
And they have a guy who leads, and every day is different workouts. They have leg day, they have chest day, and they crush it 1 hour before the work, so 4:30 to 5:30, and they start, shower and stuff 6:30. They're in the office because in the roofing business, you have to be on the job site by 7:00.
Yep.
If you go work out 6, you're gonna be late.
Yep.
And because leaders are doing it, by the way, Martin Pettigrew did 50 calorie, like I did that challenge with him, but we went for 50 calorie. Minute 36.
Wow.
It was insane.
Wow. Let him know I didn't get to 20.
And he said it was the hardest thing he have ever done. But the point is, he leads by example. So he doesn't need to body shame that you, like what I've learned is when I do a lot of podcasts with people, usually you take a picture with another man and we're very conscious how we look. And when I'm next to fitter person, it's instant motivation. You don't have to say a word. I'm like, I'm fat. You don't have to say it. I see it.
Right.
And camera actually exposes you greatly.
Yeah.
A lot of things about you. But like, so for me, like no words need to be said. You just lead by example, and people around you, they will follow.
Yeah, it's a great point. I always talk to newer reps in my industry, and I ask them, if you're working out, do you go to the most obese guy in the gym and say, how did you get here? You go right to the most fit guy and you say, hey man, how'd you get here? And I encourage people, if you have a chubby or fat doctor, find a skinny one. Because you really want to, like you said, lead by example. And over the years, one of the hardest things for me to really learn and understand was leadership and leadership development. And then years it turned into servant leadership. And it can't be the blind leading the deaf.
Love it. Let's switch to sales. Yeah. So how did you get in window sales? And how long you've done it? What have you achieved there?
cool. And I actually brought a pay stub from about 14 years ago, too, to show you what I was making weekly. That's a great question.
What's the most money you made in 1 week selling windows?
Ever?
Yeah.
I think like 12 to 14,000.
Wow, in 1 week. What was the average?
Average, when I was just selling, was about, I'd say you could make about 8 to 8,500. Wow. That was average. But I will show you that I sold a little bit higher than average. I actually finished a month at 90% close rate to issue.
Wow.
And that's how I kind of got a name.
Company leads?
They were, yes, all company leads. Yep. So the company, I can start how I started in the industry and end up there. But I have a twin brother, and my twin brother was destined. He's going to be a teacher. He wanted to be a gym teacher. And my twin brother, big shout out to my brother Eric. I've got 2 older brothers, Kevin, Paul. I got a little sister, Alyssa, and I have a twin brother Eric, and he's the salt of the earth. Just a great guy. He's 6'3", 215, but the nicest guy in the world.
But he's your twin?
We're twins.
So you don't look
We're
alike?
fraternal.
I see.
We're not identical.
I see.
And it's actually tough to tell that we're twins. Most people will card us. Let me see your IDs. But big shout out to my brother. He's never had a detention growing up. He always just followed, he followed, somebody said, do it. He did it. And I was a little bit different. I always asked why. And I questioned a lot of things, and I didn't go to school. My twin brother graduated. He's got multiple master's degrees. And I always kind of felt a little less than, especially with, you got a guy the same age. We grew up in the same area, same upbringing.
It's a great case study.
Yeah, and there's a good book on it called Switch, too. I helped my sales team with that. I'll talk about some books today, too. But Switch is just, it's following 2 different people, and they end up in 2 different paths in life. And so luckily, I had great people, great family around me. And but I think anybody that talked to me as a kid said, "You're going to be in sales. You're a sales guy. You sound like a used car salesman." And I was just in a Starbucks the other day, and a woman walked by and said, "You're in sales, aren't you?" Like it's a bad thing. But I got a call from a guy one time.
Why does it have such a bad stigma in this country?
I think we're going to talk about that. Really, there's 4 main reasons. I won't go into all of them.
Sure.
But there's things like the old Yankee-style peddler back in the 1800s would come in, fast talker, make you buy something you didn't want. There's also a book called The Death of the Salesman. If you ever heard of The Death of the Salesman. And they had it on a Broadway play, and it really depicted a loser, Willie Loman, who is just the epitome of a loser, and it's the opposite of what true professionals are. But the most important one, I know there's 4, but the most important one is us, salespeople ourselves. We don't glorify the position. When I hear people talk about sales, they never say I'm a salesperson. Nobody, and I'll get worked up a little bit about this, nobody is proud to say I'm a salesperson.
They'll say I'm a roofer, or
I do siding, I do windows, we do entry doors, we do home improvements. Stop a person and ask them, what do you do for a living? They will not say, I'm a salesperson and I'm proud to be a salesperson.
I'm a used car salesperson.
But there's a kind of a dark cloud casted over us. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here, is to give a more professional light to the world of selling. But in 2009, I got a phone call from a gentleman. His uncle owned a window company in Chicago. It's called XL Windows and Doors. And they called me and said, hey, man, we need a canvasser. And at the time, I was 20, 21 or so, and partying was like the thing to do. Like, you wanted to go out and party and meet girls. And everyone in my group, if you didn't go out on a Saturday night, you either were sick, you better have a doctor's note, but we went out and jammed it out. And I was in Wrigley Field at the time. I got a phone call, and the person said, hey, we need a canvasser. I said, well, I don't have a car, and I don't know anything about marketing or sales, so I don't want to do it. And this gentleman named Eric Chimura, said, hey, not a problem. I'll pick you up every day, and I will drop you off. I just need you to work hard. And this gentleman, Eric Chimura, he's now a fireman, picked me up every day for 6 months and drove me home out of his way so that he could have a canvasser. And
Was he that desperate, or he just liked you so much?
their uncle owned the company.
I see.
So they really just wanted friends and family working there, people they could trust. And like I said, everybody, I just talked and walked that sales, almost used car salesman lingo. So they brought me in. I made $10 an hour, and I made $25 for a lead that I set up. It had to be a qualified lead. If they're not home, you don't get paid. And
Was it hard?
it was really hard. And I think it was hard because I lacked self-esteem. I didn't have a lot of life experience, and I was extremely timid at the door. Hi, my name is... And sometimes you go up the door and be like, they're not home, go, and run away. But yeah, it was tough. But
Would you be successful if you would do it now?
I still do it.
You still
I was
do it?
knocking doors last week. I filed a claim from a random person, knocked on their door, got up on the roof, filed the claim.
I see.
Still do it to this day. Training. I don't do it by myself. I'm training a group.
Yeah.
Shout out to Zeke. He got his first claim last week with me.
Got it.
Second week in the industry. So, but I quickly learned that 2 years of door-to-door selling is equivalent to a 4-year communication degree. That you're
I
constant.
keep hearing it. Where's that coming from?
Okay, so there's a great viral video by Kenny Brooks.
Mm-hmm.
You seen Kenny Brooks at the door?
Yep, with the spray.
Yeah. Don't panic, it's organic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Kenny Brooks, at the same time, Kenny was trying to be a comedian. And what he was also doing was going to Tony Robbins's course.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Unleash the Power Within. And with that, Tony encouraged people to break out of your shell, get comfortable in the uncomfortable. And one of the things is to go door-to-door selling. It's the hardest thing
His
to do.
early videos are so funny. I met him at door-to-door conference at Sam Taggers in Utah. What a funny guy. The early ones are the funniest.
The best.
The jokes.
Oh, man. Unlike Michael Vick at Safe Around the Dogs.
Yeah.
I mean, he crushed it. He crushed it.
Yeah.
But at that same time, it helped me because I watched that video. When I get into sales, I'll kind of fast forward. But when I got into sales, I realized that he was using humor. He was popping at the door. When that curtain came up, he gave it the greatest hits. So shout out to Kenny Brooks.
Yeah.
Amazing. But so within that time, I really wanted to get into sales. After 2 years, I was now the marketing manager for the company, running the showroom, helping team canvassers. And I just really wanted to get into sales. And I talked with the owner, and he says, unfortunately, Brian, I cannot let you do that. You're too young, and I don't believe you'd have enough bullets in your arsenal. So unfortunately, we're going to keep you in the position you are. And at that time, I was also learning I can't make $12 an hour for the rest of my life. This is not what I'm set up to do. And I'll never forget, an installer came into the showroom, and he said, hey, man, they're going to get you a nice little skirt behind that desk. And I was like, okay.
Enough.
Yeah, well, I was like, all right, cool, man. But I knew deep down inside that I've got way more charisma, way more stamina. I'm sharper than that person, and I'll never let a person talk to me like that in business. So a couple weeks, I said, hey, this is it. I want to get into sales. That very day, we had a conversation, and I resigned with the owner over the phone. I said, unfortunately, Chris, if you cannot advance me to sales, I feel like I'm stuck. I've mastered this job. I need to get into sales. And he said, this is where we'll part, Brian. And it was a great thing. I think the key to life is finding positive outlets in negative situations. And although I felt like everything just folded in front of me, it had started my journey. I met with a group called Window Works. This was 2 days later. So I resigned on July 3rd. It was my mother's birthday. And July 5th, I met with a company called Window Works. Did about a 45-minute interview. Guy stood up, said, are you going to make it to sales training class on Monday? And I stood back, and I'll never forget the shirt I was wearing. I was more pale than the whiteboard behind me. I was sweating. I was nervous. And I asked him, are you going to allow me to come? Are you offering me a job? And he said, yeah, dude, can you make it on Monday? And I said, hold on. I said, I have a question. I just worked for a company for 3 years, didn't miss a day of work, busted my butt.
You did it for 3 years.
Yeah, and asked for the position and didn't get it. I asked him, why are you offering me the position now? And I'll never forget it. Jim Schmitz, my first ever sales manager, he stood up. He said, well, you've got 2 legs and you're able to do this, right? Come to class on Monday.
You're breathing.
And that was it. So I went through my sales training class, and it was a disaster. It was horrible. The HR person came in, told me I sucked. I'm never going to make it.
Why HR person tells you that you suck?
You got to think that at this time, this is 2012,
Okay.
and the company is just really building their infrastructure. It looks like a bigger outfit than it is, but really only about 30, 40 people. And I'm coming in as a very green salesperson, hungry. I couldn't really see all behind the scenes. But a gentleman said, hey, you suck. You're not going to make it. You better step it up or you're out. And there was 3 people in my class, including myself. So myself and 2 other people. And day 3, a gentleman walked in. He was a kid. He was my age, a year or 2 older. He was from New York. And his hair was slicked over to the side. It looked like he gelled his hair and then hung out the side of the window the whole way there. It was like a beetle. He had like a shirt like mine on. He had slacks on. I remember he was wearing a Breitling. And he came in, he threw his phone down on the desk. He said, hey, everything you guys just learned the last 3 days, forget it. Now, do you guys want to learn how to sell windows? And just like that, the game changed. This kid he taught me everything. He taught me as far as demeanor, questions to ask, physiology. You know, it's really cool if you break down the communication. If you had a percentage of all communication, how much do you think words are percentage? So if we had 100 and there's 3 categories, how much do you think the words make up of those percentages?
20% max?
7. 7. 38% is tonality. 55% is physiology.
I can see that.
So he taught us one thing. Dress for the position you want, not the one you're in. You'll never get a second chance to make a first impression. So bring it. And for the next 2 weeks, that kid took me under his wing. He's older than me, but at that very moment, what I realized is I needed to put self-worth on myself. If he can do it, I can do it. If he can say it, I can say it. And that's the self-worth that people do not put on themselves. They see somebody do something. They see Zuckerberg. I could never create metaverse. Probably not, because you can't imagine it. But there's so much untapped potential in all human beings. We're just the ones that keep it dormant. We don't release it.
Do you believe with the statement that we live only like to 1% of our capacity?
100%. Now, I don't know about 1%,
but very little.
But it's not 100. Nobody's living at 100.
You know what's my favorite movie is?
What's that?
Lucy.
Lucy?
Lucy. Johnson, I think is the girl. Dakota Johnson.
I know it, but I'm not too familiar.
It's a Luc Besson movie. So good. Like, it's pretty much they drug these people. So they created this drug that it's almost like Limitless, but Luc Besson. And anyway, so this girl, she survives, and she has this, bag of drugs, and eventually, the more she eats, the more capacities she opens. So pretty much she goes from like a couple percent to 100%. And Morgan Freeman is in it. Freaking what a movie. And she was a professor who was teaching evolution and how we only like couple percent. Anyway, so she reaches the 100%. Like, she smells things around. She sees the freaking future.
Wow.
Amazing movie.
Yeah. I mean, humans were unlike any life source that has ever walked this planet. The cool thing about humans, too, is we're the only really animal in the kingdom to have a conscious and a subconscious mind. There's really no other animal that has that. There's alligators, birds, spiders. They just have that subconscious. So when it turns cold, where does the geese fly? South. But they don't think one winter, say, hey, let's go east. Let's go west. Maybe we'll go north. Maybe we'll fly to Canada. They don't. But we're the only human beings to have both a conscious and a subconscious
We'll go
mind.
to Siberia. I will send people to Siberia.
That's if they get in trouble. But my first sales, so finally we get out of the sales training and they said, hey, you're cut loose. Looking back, I didn't learn anything about the installation of the window. I didn't learn anything about the window, really. We just learned how to sell the window. It was very unique. And I think it was just, what I realized, it was a mishmash.
How important is product knowledge for the sales?
Initially or long term?
Whatever. Like, to be successful, to be truly successful. So when you were making $8,000-9,000 a week selling windows, how much did you know about the windows?
Everything. I was a window nerd.
Okay.
Talking about.
So it is important.
For me, yes. Some people, some salespeople say it's not. I've met salesmen and women who have this inherent gift to meet with people and connect with them and persuade them. I've met people that have sold tens of millions of dollars of windows, have never shown the window. I can't fathom that. I bring in the window every time.
Is it because we have different personalities? Is it because we read people differently, interact differently?
It's a great question.
I
think
different pickup lines.
the gentleman I'm thinking of, he's been in the industry for 30 years, and I think he understands the game, and he just what I like to be, and I teach this in jiu-jitsu and wrestling, is you always want to be 5 steps ahead, and it's really selling on the offense versus selling on the defense. And most people are playing not to lose.
Defense.
Play to win, and you'll change the game. Go in there with a goal, with an end result, a target, right? My goal is to solve somebody's problem. And if I don't solve their problem, I didn't hit my goal.
This is deep. Yeah.
And I think that's how you change the sales perspective too, is that I'm not selling people, I'm solving problems. And if somebody calls me and they have a problem and I can solve it, I believe that I deserve a commission check. And if somebody has 2 problems and I solve 2 problems, I believe I deserve 2 commission checks. And I think people look at it as a negative thing, that you're compensated for helping somebody that has a problem. But if they could solve their problem, then they would have done it.
Because we program ourselves. One of the craziest thing ever, like if you drive the car and you see that you're about to hit the car, or when you're running, let's start with the running. You run in the forest. You should not be looking under your feet. You should be looking where you're going in front of you. So you have to vision where you're going to be and not where you're at. The same with the car. So if you drive the car and you focus, people who survive car accidents usually are the people who were not only ahead, but you have to focus what's ahead of you. And as crazy as it sounds, like I'm guilty of it, but I think it's a good thing. If I feel like someone, like let's say you going on that yellow and it's about to hit right, and you see the car going sideways, you know where you need to go. Sometimes you better close your eyes and speed up because you need to get there.
Yep.
And if you panic, if you slow down, the car is too close. If you focus on where you're at, boom, you get smashed. And sometimes it's like close the eyes and just go forward. As crazy as it sounds,
Yeah.
that's how you survive the car accident.
Yeah.
That's how because you know you should focus where you go, not where you're at. And even like in the boxing and MMA, it's not like when you get hit. So that my coach, it was the hardest lesson ever. So you get hit, so he's hitting you, and you should learn immediately how to counter punch as he's hitting you. That's hard because when someone's hitting you, you're here, you should be defending yourself. But what happened when they hit you? Their face is open. So the
Right.
moment they hit you, you should immediately go here while you're receiving a punch.
Yeah. Where most people want to
Exactly.
just have their guard up.
Exactly. Now
Yeah.
exchange starts.
And I believe that comes down to, and I don't want to get too deep, but like,
Sure.
Manifestation. And it's the opposite. If you're driving on a road and you're telling yourself, I don't want to hit this pole, I'm not going to hit the pole, I don't want to hit this
You
pole,
will.
you're going to hit the pole.
I believe in it 100%. If you 100% say, like I remember, so I'm on the CrossFit, and I remember we have this girl, and I've heard her interview 2 weeks prior to the games. she was so afraid of injury, and she said it out loud in the interview. I'm afraid to injure my elbow. She snatches and she breaks her elbow. I could not believe it. I paused it. I found the interview and I told my kids this. Like, kids, listen to this story. This is why you never say out loud, or, I'm afraid to go bankrupt. I'm afraid I'm gonna, fail this exam. You don't proclaim those things.
No, I'm a big believer. We were talking a little bit this morning about religion, but I'm a big believer in one thing: the universe will always provide. What you put out in the universe, you will get back.
I would say
with
God will
feelings.
always provide, but
but
for some of our audience, we can switch it to universe.
but what you put out is what you get back
I
with
agree.
feeling. And if you want more love in your life, you got to give more love out. If you don't want hate in your life, don't be giving hate out. And if you don't want people talking about you, don't talk about people. And the universe will always provide. And how much hard work and just dedication and determination I put into the sales training role, it's paid off for me neons of years. And my trainer only asked one thing: pay it forward, help another person, give back.
Love it. But would you agree that there's a fine line between, so there's confidence and there's overconfidence?
Okay, cool.
Right. So there's some people who might be listening now and say, well, I'm just going to assume every sale. And I feel like it's a big mistake for salespeople to assume too early, because, if you're talking to me trying to earn my business and you already assume that you got it, and I'm like, dude, we're not there yet. I'm just shopping around. I'm getting 3 estimates or whatever the case is.
Right.
Because I don't like you. I don't trust you. And you're assuming the sale? Like,
No. So the old saying was close early, close often, and close late. That's textbook 101 sales. I find it 2/3 wrong. If you attempt to close a sale too early, you're going to come off as a high pressure salesperson, and the person's going to say no to you, and you're going to turn them off. If you attempt to close too late, most people have a built-in objection or a stall, and you might just lose them. But the key is to ask for the close, go for the close after you have built value and you've earned the right to ask for their business. In the first 10 minutes, if you ask somebody for their business, those walls are going to go up. And Forbes did a good article about the sales resistance wall, but more so an anchor. And every consumer has an anchor, and they've got their built-in objections and their stalls. But the moment you try to attack it early, that anchor goes deeper in the sand and deeper, and it's harder to pull that anchor out as it goes. So when I start my sales role, I'm very cool, calm, and collected, and I'm a chameleon. I'm a master at studying scripts, but I also know how to adapt and to adjust. When I meet people, I'll just knock on the door and say, "Hi, Dmitry." "Hi, Dmitry. I'm Brian with ABC Home Improvement. Thank you very much for having me come out to your home today. May I come in?"
sure.
"Thanks." "Dmitry, do you mind if I kick my shoes off over there? I'll set them down by the other ones."
Yes, please.
"Okay, excellent. Do you have a good spot to set up, like the kitchen or dining room table?"
Let's go by the kitchen.
"Perfect. Cool. Lead the way." That's it. And then when we get to the kitchen table, I ask, "Hey, is it okay I set up over here, or do you want me to set up over here?" And I think people, when they're going to listen to that, are going to say, "Oh, that's textbook. We've all heard that." But it's a few things. If you back it up, it's the basics. I'm showing up on time. I'm dressed for the position. I'm prepared mentally. Before I knock on the door, I've done my work, my research, my homework. I've studied my scripts. I've studied my closing. So now it's just the curtain rising, and now I have to give my greatest hits album. But my demeanor is very soft, cool, calm, and collected, and I'm going to go with the flow. There will be a time and a place where I'll really start to take control. But one of the things I'll tell them at the kitchen table is, "Guys, the last thing I want to do is waste your time on a Tuesday afternoon. But what I want to do here is ask you a few quick questions about your roof. We'll go up and inspect the roof. I can even peek my head in the attic. We'll design some colors, and then we'll work up a number." Dmitry, does that sound fair to you?
Yes.
Awesome. Who can I thank for having you folks call us? That's it. And then I think throughout the process, we're overthinking things, and I can rip that script back 1,000 times. I was at a restaurant a couple weeks ago, and I gave a closing script, and someone said, "You can't do that again." I said, "Here, it's verbatim." He said, "Holy smokes, you said that verbatim." I find that most people don't take the sales role serious. They come in because they want to make a lot of money. That's it. And now they put that into the universe, that's what this is for, money. And when you chase the money grows legs and runs. Promise you. Do something because you enjoy it and you love it. You'll never work a day in your life. We've all heard that. But do it for money, you're going to be out really quick. You'll be finding other jobs, and you'll be what I call a career interviewer. You master the interviews.
Do you know why thinking about money does not work?
It's just like my a partner of mine I work out with, Bilal, remember the name, Muhammad, just won the welterweight UFC belt. And the last thing that person has on his mind is money. He had a goal to win a belt. First, it was just he wanted an amateur fight. And inevitably, he got to a place where a couple weeks ago, he won the UFC welterweight belt. And shout out to Bilal and everyone from Chicago, Kevin Novacek, Mike Cannon, Horacio, Max, Lewis put the guns down, Taylor, all these guys that have helped him get to that. And I won't say what I believe he won, but it was not for the money. If he was doing it for money, he used to make $3,000 a fight. So I believe you do things because it lights you up. You know, it excites you. And all human beings.
We have guys in the studio who's getting sales training all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Pays to be behind the scenes.
And we haven't even got into it.
Yeah. No, I love it. I agree with you 100%. But I was reading a psychologist on this topic, and one of the main reasons, I mean, obviously we know the Bible says, like, don't chase the money and stuff, but there's your brain cannot, your subconscious mind cannot process money. Like, so for example, if you say, like, I want to be with this woman, I want to have kids, like, you know, like, you want to survive, right? Like, your brain can connect the dots. Like, if you, like, for example, if you visualize becoming the president of the United States, if you visualize becoming an actor, becoming, you know, CEO of a large corporation, right? You can visualize it, but you cannot visualize making money. Money is just a tool. So if we're talking about manifestation, manifest where you see yourself, and your brain will connect the dots how to get there. But you cannot manifest something unless it's like very, very visual. That, for the same reason, is the biggest BS people say out loud, like, oh, I have a goal. I want to put 1,000, you know, I want to plant 1,000 trees in my city. Why? Like, oh, for the planet. No, you don't. It's BS. You don't feel it. You cannot visualize it. Because your goal, your manifest, has to have something. It has to have you in it. If you want to plant 1,000 plants, 1,000 trees in your own town, and you are not in it, like, you will never achieve it. That's a stupid goal to chase because you are not in it. Now you can make it about you. You can tweak it, but when we make those stupid, you know, affirmations, you know, oh, I want to make 6 figures, but why? What's there for 6 figures? Oh, I want to make $250,000, but why? You know, I've never made more than $200,000 a year. I'm not even changed, but I have 5 kids. I have 5 businesses. I'm a rich man, but I've never made $250,000 a year. People make stupid goals, and then they question themselves why I cannot reach it, because you can't.
Yeah, and I love that. And I hope after this podcast, we're 250,000 guys. But here's a good saying that I learned in psychology a long time ago. Affirmation without discipline is the beginning of delusion.
Mm-hmm.
So I can say it again. Affirmation without discipline is the beginning of delusion.
And we have so many delusional people. Because
but they're saying they're doing it.
Yeah.
But I said to you earlier, listen to the behaviors. Listen to the behaviors. Faces lie, numbers don't. Faces lie, results don't. But here's a good case study that we'd always do in sales. A doctor. Is he doing it to save lives, or is he doing it to make millions of dollars?
Depends on the doctor.
Depends on the salesperson.
Depends on the salesperson.
If you're truly going around to solve people's problems, the money's going to come. The vehicle you've seen me drive up in, I purchased that with a year-end bonus. But I had to sacrifice, because what I failed to tell you was after 6 months I was running, I was the #1 rep in this company of 40, 50 people. And I eventually, I met with the owner. His name is Ron Varick. And Ron started WindowWorks by himself. Maybe not, but he was running it for a long time by himself. And when I came in, I was 23, 24. He was only 32. And the things that I learned from Ron Varick, I was his right-hand man for a long time, changed just my whole outlook in life. And the one thing he said, Malone, you don't got vision. He's only 32. You should see his house now. He sold WindowWorks, but again, he wasn't doing it for money.
What was his goals? What was his vision?
Ron's just a very disciplined, passionate guy. So it could have been him running a farm, and he would have done it to 100. He's one of those guys that he's clipping at 100. He's not a drinker. He's not a drugger. He's not a partier. He has sacrificed his life and family and friends. But when he turned 40, he's done. Sold it for, I don't want to say, but he's done. Never has to work a day in his life. But I met with Ron, and he said, hey, man, there was 3 people in your training class. Why are you selling at the clip you're selling at, and they're struggling? I said, hey, man, I think I have an idea, and I think I know why. It's in my car. Would you like to see it? And he's like, shoot, I got to bring my kid to hockey, but I'll give you 10 minutes. And he put on a timer. This guy was regimented. So I ran downstairs, and what I did throughout my training class is there was multiple people that would come in. So there'd be a sales manager would come in and said, hey, learn this script, and then go to lunch. And another guy would come in and say, hey, learn this, and this is how you install the window. So do you know what I did? I took all that stuff and I put it in a very organized binder. And I did it by step 1, step 2, step 3, and I mastered this. But I hand wrote it too. And I'll talk about that maybe at another segment of the importance of reading and handwriting. But I hand wrote the whole thing. And the owner looked at me at the company and said, hey, can you keep your numbers up for the next 3 months? I'm like, yeah, I'm hoping to go above it. And he said, if you can keep your numbers up for the next 3 months, you'll be my corporate sales trainer. So let's rock and roll. And for the next 7 years, I didn't miss a day of work at the company, and worked my butt off so somebody else can get rich. But it taught me invaluable lessons that nobody can take away from me. And anytime I help somebody in sales, I tell them, I'm going to teach you something that's invaluable, and you can use it for the rest of your life. And you don't owe me a thing. But what I do ask is that you take this serious. And when you show up, play all out. Because that's all I ask. Just play all out. And if there's ever a time you're resisting something, just ask yourself, why am I resisting this? And and I think what's important is the power of an idea can be measured by the degree of resistance it attracts. So people seeing me as a 24-year-old kid, pale, sweaty, looked like a vampire. And they're like, how is this kid going to teach the class? And, I've got guys, one of my greatest things in life is leading other leaders. I think that's a true mark of a leader, is when you can lead other leaders. It's easy to lead people that are desperate, despondent, that are hurt in life. They're looking for that. But a true leader leads other leaders. And I was a sales trainer. The other person that taught me was using ketamine.
What's ketamine?
It's a drug. He wouldn't show up to work. He's not a drinker. He was just a partier or a drugger. He's like a drug guy. And there were times he wouldn't show up to work. And I remember a whole group came.
Is that what Matthew Perry died from?
I think so. Yes. Don't know anything about it, but he told me one time, and I'm like, you probably should look into that. It doesn't sound too healthy. But there were times he didn't show up, and we were both the sales trainers. So then it came where now we're doing this as a team. So it's this person that first trained me and myself. We went 28 for 28 sales in a row. And the next sale, nobody was home. But, and Vinny, I know you're listening, or you might be listening to that, but that's one thing nobody could take away from us is we were 28 for 28 in a row.
Wow.
Crushed it. And on the way to the sales call, we would just laugh. We would try to envision what the person looked like. Oh, this person, we'd look at the last name. They're going to be tall. They're going to be, and one time we nailed it. We're like, she's going to have strawberry hair. And the person opened the door and we're like, holy smokes. And we just started laughing. And we'd have a lot of fun. You know, we'd walk up with trainees. We're walking up to a house with a brand new rookie. You know what I would ask him walking up? I'd say, hey, how much money do you got in your pocket? He'd say, I don't know, like $40. I'd say, if you open your mouth once, that $40 is mine. Oh, come on. And I'd knock on the door and I'd say, hi there, Dmitry? Hi, Dmitry, it's Brian from WindowWorks. Oh, and by the way, it's bring your brother to work day. I've got Kevin with me. And we'd go in the house and we'd have a blast. But then eventually that other sales trainer, he went by the wayside. He asked me to loan him $10,000 for a wedding. I loaned him $10,000. 2 weeks later, nobody can find him. But it was a great lesson, not the money part. I could show you a text, years. Just pay me, buddy. But it was a great lesson, and I learned a lot of not getting burnt by people too. Don't get too close with people. You know, that's why you asked earlier, like, do you really encourage people to go to the gym? I want to first show them how to be successful in the sales role. And then when we get closer, I kind of wanted to open up. But that also taught me to not get too close in business too. You want to kind of decompartmentalize your relationships as well. But after that, I was the corporate sales trainer, did that for 7 years. And there's nothing more that lit me up than taking a person that was scared and timid, meek, had 10 thumbs for fingers and a tongue that's like 4 inches too wide. I can't get anything out. And then after 3 months, see them number one. There was no paycheck. There was nothing, no experience, no drug, nothing that can give me and light me up like that was just making somebody successful. I had a guy call me one time. He said, Brian, he said, I can't thank you, kid. He goes, I'm forever grateful. I said, hey, Tom, you don't owe me anything. I'm paid to do this. I'm paid to train you guys. And he said, no. I seen my son last night for the first time as the father I should have been for the last 5 years. And I asked him, I said, you haven't seen your son in 5 years? He goes, no, I've seen my son, Brian, but I showed up like the father I should have showed up last night when I seen him. And that to me was like, there's no paycheck. And just because I'm helping somebody in their business, but that's why when people look at me, they're like, man, you got to be nuts to love this much. But it's not a job. It's not a career.
But why so many people cannot stay long enough in sales? Why turnover? Like, I think no more than like life shelf of a typical sales rep is like 5 years max, usually. And that's if they are good. Usually they quit, they go do something else, or they move up within the company.
Yeah, there's a great story of one of the best sales people ever, Walter Haley. And Walter Haley started out in the insurance industry, and he started out just like everybody else starts out, timid, scared. Most of the time it's just this fear of the unknown, the uncertainty. And I always depict fear as false evidence appearing real. But people are just scared. And when you walk around timid, you back yourself into a corner. So Walter Haley, he wasn't finding success early, and he went to his manager and said, unfortunately, I have to quit. And his manager said, what? And he said again, sheepishly, he said, hey, I have to quit. I'm getting out of the industry. And he said his manager said something to him that hit him like a ton of bricks that nobody would ever said to him. He said, Walter, you can't quit something that you've never been in.
It's true.
So when people talk about sales being a revolving door, the reality is it's the person, the individual, that's not taking the opportunity and really maximizing their potential.
Can,
They're quitting way
can
too early.
anyone do it?
Oh yeah, I've been in one industry my entire life. Never swayed. I've been in home improvements my entire life.
But is sales for everyone? That's my question.
No,
It's not
no.
for everyone. How do you know if it's, because in that case, like, yeah, you're not in it, but what if Walter is not made for it?
I believe that should be spotted before the sales training. I think that the importance of
How
recruiting.
do you spot it? What are the traits you're looking for?
A great example is using the DISC test.
Mhm.
Have you ever seen DISC?
Yeah.
I've taken DISC every 2 years, and my D and I are through the roof. And it's very obvious that if your D and I are not above that bell curve, you're gonna have a hard time in sales. And over the years of studying business and sales and marketing, I've actually learned that introverts are more successful than extroverts in sales.
True.
I just think it's very much like boxing or maybe a gym or jujitsu where you're just timid to start. And some people don't ever get into it. But remember, I talked about that dark cloud casted over our industry. And my goal is to get that thing out of us and have a shining light on our industry that I'm very proud to be a salesperson. I solve people's problems. And, you know, it's just, I couldn't imagine doing anything else. But to answer your question, no. Sales is not congruent with everybody's personality.
Are you familiar with the leaf filter sales process? What do you think about it? Start all the way high, keep dropping. It's very popular actually, and they're a huge company. Few other companies do a very similar thing. You start at the highest point, and then you drop, and then at the end, well, if you buy it at $12, I'm not going to get a commission, but I'll let you have it.
Yeah, I don't believe in it. And I believe what you're doing is, I'll back it up a little bit. First thing I always say is the goal is to set up an environment that's conducive to a sale. Set the stage, but set an environment that's conducive to a sale. When you build value and you go through the sales process, you know, homeowners, especially homeowners and consumers, they have a scale before you start in their mind, and the price is way down here, right? And your value or your benefits are way up here. The goal is to change it, that you're going to give them these big stack of benefits for their little stack of money. But when you first start, they're looking at you and saying, I'm not giving you my big stack of money for your little stack of benefits. So the goal is to change that perception. And ultimately, you're building value into you, your company, your product, your installation, your service after the fact. But here's my question. If you build value and you slash the price in half, aren't you discrediting all your work?
Why do they do it?
I believe that, one, it's number psychology. When you see a number that's 30,000 and then you see a number that's 3,000, well, ultimately, if you and I went to lunch and spent $3,000, you'd be like, Brian, you're never allowed back on the podcast ever again. Don't come out here, dude. I don't care. Don't come back. But if we spent 30,000 prior weekend going to Ibiza or having some fun, spending 3,000 for lunch doesn't really seem all that much. And so I think it's a numbers psychology is when they see 18,000 and now you can get it for 9, they're creating price urgency.
Some people also will have a turn off because of that.
I mean, could you imagine going to buy a vehicle and they're like, no, it's
because it tells you, like, did you try to screw me before? So you can do it for 9. Why did you try to get 18?
Yeah. Now, I've, how do I say, I'll say this just openly, I've dropped price in the house. How you do it is with credibility. And I exchange the time for money. So for example, if I'm at 18,000, someone's like, hey, Brian, do it for 17,000 and we write the check, we'll put it all to bed. The first thing that I think is you have to be conscious of is that I've done all the work up until that point. If you just skip steps and you lay off price, it's not going to work. But what I love to tell people is, no, I can't do that. Or I can do that if you have a spare bedroom because I'm going to be fired and I'll have to live with you for the next 3 weeks. So no, I can't just take money off. And I like to have fun like that, and I teach my sales guy to do that. That's perfect. If I can sleep in the sauna for the next 3 weeks, I'll do it for 17, but I'm going to be fired. So I want to take it away from people, but I do it with a little bit of humor. And then what I like to do is a justified drop. So what I would explain to someone is that, for example, like years ago, Domino's, they did this case study where they went around, they went to college campuses, they put up this table, this folding table, and they offered free slices. But in order for you to take a free slice as a college kid, you also had to leave them a review, and you had to give them positive and negative feedback. Ultimately, do you know what they found through some of that feedback? Is that they lacked a ton of spices, they lacked a ton of, just flavor, and the boxes were way too small where the cheese would melt on that. So what Domino's did is they put different herbs in there, they revamped the pizza, and they made the box much bigger. But that's invaluable information that you're never going to get from a person that orders a pizza and throws the box away. But if a homeowner like yourself is willing to sacrifice some time and give us negative and positive reviews, I'd be willing to credit you with a marketing incentive. Now, this isn't $1,000, but let me walk you through what we'd have to do. So what I'm doing is I'm teeing up a justified drop, but then I'm giving validity behind it. And then what I do is I come out with a form, I fly a drone, and we do a whole marketing thing, and I can show you on my computer that now I'm going to put you on Instagram. We're going to use your home to market. And if you're willing to go through that and sacrifice time and give us real life feedback from people that are with us every step of the way, not just, yeah, they showed up on time, they were good, real feedback, like how was the crew when they showed up? Did they tarp off all high traffic areas? Did they clean up after themselves? Did they provide a clean and safe work environment? And if you're willing to give honest feedback and not just surface level answers, then I'd be willing to pay you, incentivize you for your feedback. Is that something you'd be up for? Now, what did I just do right there, Dmitry?
You gave me value.
But at the end, I said, would you be up for that?
And some people will, some people won't.
I'm using this as to close with a commitment. That if you're willing to commit and work with us, I'm willing to incentivize you for that real, raw, organic feedback. And then I give them $185 off. And they think it's the best thing since sliced milk. And usually we're at that moment and they're ready to buy. But I'll tell you, real buyers will give you the most resistance right before they go and grab the checkbook.
I can see that. I have, let's wrap it up with this. I have like 7, 8 questions.
Yeah.
What's the most common mistake salespeople make that instantly kills a deal? These are all sales questions.
2 things. 1, they're talking about areas that have nothing to do with the sale. 2, they tend to get very monotoned at the end of the presentation.
Love it. If you could change one thing about sales industry overnight, what that would be and why?
Clean it up. Clean it up. I don't think the high top Jordans are very professional. Seems like every roofer is wearing the high top Jordans. I'm not saying I don't have them in my closet, but I don't wear them to seminars. And I think we need a checkup from the neck up. Sales.
Love it. What's the craziest thing you've done to close a sale, and did it work?
Love it. I was on Olympia Fields, Illinois, and I was in this McMansion, 75 windows. And I'm a year in, I'm the trainer. So they give me the big lead. My mother grew up in this area. R. Kelly had a house next to it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get all 75 of these windows, come back. The other thing too, when I was a sales trainer, I was really on stage. So when I got a lead, I better come back and close it. Cause like you said, you gotta lead from the front. So I meet with Betty Jones, not her name, but it was Betty Jones on the contract. And ultimately I find really warming up, having a great time.
What do you mean not her name?
She was giving me a fake name. She was big money. They produce meat.
Okay.
So yeah, interesting lady, but she had a Rolls Royce in the garage. And so for 20 minutes, we're talking about the Rolls Royce, but what we agreed upon, she was a single widow. She had a party coming up, and what we agreed upon is she would do half the windows with me now. We'd do the other half down the road, but I had to drive her. I had to be the driver in the Rolls Royce to drive her to the party.
That day?
No. It was like in a couple of weekends. But I
see.
agreed that I would be the driver to drive her.
Why she needed a driver?
She's just this old rich lady that just wanted this persona. So I said, yeah, no problem. I'll usher you to the party.
Love it. How do you respond to people who say sales is just a numbers game and not about relationships?
I think it's foolish. I think that people buy for two reasons, logic and emotion. But they make the decision, it's an emotional decision, and it's supported by logic. And if the key ingredient is trust, and if you can't build trust with a human being, they're not going to buy from you. I don't care how great of a deal you have. If somebody can't trust and respect that you're going to take care of them and service their account, they'll never buy from you. So I just feel for people that can't go in the house or don't want to go in the house and build a relationship. I've heard a lot of things over the years of don't teach the warm-up and the warm-up's stupid, get right into it. Well, I teach a rolling warm-up where at front, the first couple minutes, I don't expect you to tell me about your life, but when we're with each other for the next 60 to 90 minutes, my goal is to have that person open up and relax a little bit. So I call that the rolling warm-up. And it's just from building relationships and asking questions and eventually getting to that gut level feeling with that person.
Love it. What's the biggest misconception people have about sales that drives you crazy?
Selling is easy. Another one I always love hearing, I heard it over the weekend. You have to love your product in order to sell it.
Do you?
No, but I think it's going to come. We talked about 55% as body language. And if you're selling something that you would never put on your home, you're going to come across it and it'll come through your body language.
Yeah. How can you love your product if you sell some hoses or some freaking engineered material, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Some accessories.
But I sold acrylic bathroom surrounds for a couple of years, and I'm not really big on them. But there is a place for them in Chicago. There's value to them, but it's not something that I would put in my home. So I did have a little bit of a kind of a rub with selling something that I wouldn't put in my home. The products I sell now, Owens Corning, Duration, put that on my roof 1,000 times over, Weatherlock G, the underlayment, as far as either Louisiana Pacific or James Hardy. I like Pella and Anderson windows. Those are the products that I would put in my home and I'd be proud to sell. But no, I don't think you have to love the product in order to sell it.
Got it. What's the one piece of advice you'd give anyone who wants to make 6 figures in sales?
Man, be ready to burn at both ends, because there's 2 ways I look at sales. It's either fast and quick. Anybody can make that fast and quick sale, but you're going to be out of the industry even faster. Or you look at this as a career that you can have longevity with. And you might not make a lot of sales up front, but if you have longevity in sales and you do it with integrity, you'll make a career out of it.
Love it. If you could write a book about the sales industry, what would be the title be, and what's the first chapter is about?
Well, I already wrote it. It's not finished. Okay. I love it. But
so what's the name and what's the first chapter?
Okay, so I always ask every one of my sales training, when they start, the trainees, I ask them one question when we start. How do you build a brick wall?
Start the foundation.
There it is. So I just say it's brick by brick. one brick at a time. And today we're just going to learn one brick. We're going to put another one next to it. It's going to be brick by brick. So the title of my book is Brick by Brick by Brian Malone. And it's not how to make a sale, but how to build a sales career. And the first chapter is it's the basics, the fundamentals. Things like I have little sayings. You've heard of ABC.
Yeah.
What's that?
Always be closing.
Right. I've changed it. Mine is always be confident.
Okay.
So little
Makes
things
sense.
like that, having just the basics, showing, and I always like stories. So I'll have a little story, not about myself, but just a story of a person in selling. Yeah.
Last question. How do you handle a rejection, and what's the best way to bounce back stronger?
Just one thing that people need to learn in sales is that people are not rejecting you, they're refusing your offer.
That's deep. Love it. How do people contact you? Where they can find you? What's your tags? Like, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, I'm under, and if you find me on Instagram, I have Brian Malone 312. But I'd love to put my number out there. If anybody's just wants to talk. I've had a guy call me a couple weeks ago. I showed you, and he just needed to talk. I love it. I don't think we talk enough in sales about mental awareness and just either men or women just having that positive mental mindset. But I'd love to come I always talk to companies, and I've trained in Miami, I've trained in New York, I've trained in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Indiana, Ohio, and I still find that all customers have the same objections at the end, which is very neat. And they just say a few things: think, shop, sleep, too expensive. And if you can overcome those, think, shop, sleep, too expensive, you'll be really successful in this career. But my phone number, I can be reached at 708-545-1768. And feel free to text me, call me. And I have day rates. I come out, do a couple days, spend with the sales team. And I promise you, if we go out, I'll knock doors, file claims, set appointments, and we will close a deal.
Love it. Thank you so much for being here, brother.
Yeah, thank you very much.